Did you know that there was a helicopter so revolutionary it was the first in history designed specifically to kill, so lethal that its pilots nicknamed it the Snake, and that one of them rescued a downed F-100 pilot when the man clung to the deployed weapons panel door while they were flying at 200 kilometers per hour? And that this same helicopter, the AH-1 Cobra, flew over 1 million combat hours in Vietnam, destroyed thousands of enemy targets, and became the grandfather of all modern attack helicopters, including the dreaded Apache? In this video, we reveal the incredible story of the Bell AH-1 Cobra, the world's first dedicated attack helicopter, how it forever changed aerial warfare, and why the pilots who flew it say there has never been a more exciting helicopter to fly. The story of the AH-1 Cobra begins with a deadly problem in the skies of Vietnam. The OH-1 Huey was dying. By the mid-1960s, the United States was losing Hueys at an alarming rate. While the Huey was outstanding as a troop transport, medical evacuation helicopter, and general support aircraft, it was terribly vulnerable when used as a weapons platform. The Huey was simply too wide, too slow, and too large a target when required to attack enemy positions. In January 1965, Bell Helicopter invested $1 million. Bell invested millions of dollars of its own money, a massive sum at the time, to develop an entirely new concept, a helicopter designed from the ground up specifically as an attack platform. Bell engineer Mike Folse had been working on conceptual sketches after Bell lost a contract with Lockheed to produce an attack helicopter. Less than 6 months later, the Cobra prototype, known as the Model 209, made its maiden flight at Amon Carter Field in Fort Worth, launching a new generation of military helicopters. The design was brilliant in its simplicity. Bell took the tried-and-tested components from the Huey, the Lycoming T-53 engine, the transmission, and the 540 rotor system from the UH-1C, were combined with a completely new and radical airframe. The result was astonishing. Where the Huey had a wide, bulky fuselage almost 3 meters across, the Cobra had a slim, aerodynamic body less than 1 meter wide at its narrowest point. Let's pause here to invite you to like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this. Are you enjoying the video so far? This slender silhouette made the approaching Cobra present a disturbingly small target to any enemy gunner on the ground. View of. From the front, the Cobra was barely visible compared to the Huey. This reduced profile would dramatically improve combat survivability. The cockpit configuration was equally revolutionary. Instead of seating unlike the Huey, where the pilot and co-pilot sat side by side, the Cobra used tandem seating with the gunner in the front and below, and the pilot directly behind and slightly elevated. This arrangement gave the gunner an excellent view of the ground immediately in front of the helicopter, while the pilot had sufficient visibility to maneuver in almost any situation. The most innovative aspect of the Cobra's design was its M28 turret, mounted under the nose. This turret could house a combination of a 7.62 mm minigun and a 40 mm grenade launcher, allowing the gunner to engage targets regardless of the helicopter's flight path. This was revolutionary. While previous helicopters needed to align the entire aircraft with the target to fire effectively, the Cobra could now engage enemies from different angles, giving it a tremendous tactical advantage over ground forces. On September 3, 1965, Bell unveiled its Model 209 prototype, and 4 days later, just 8 months after receiving the green light, it made its maiden flight. The U.S. Army was immediately impressed. In November 1965, it awarded the project to Bell. After intensive testing at Edwards Air Force Base in California in December, the Army ordered 2 pre-production aircraft and 110 production units in April 1966. On August 29, 1967, the first 6 AH-1 Cobra helicopters arrived at Bien Hoa Air Base in South Vietnam. One of these helicopters, the Virginia Rose II, serial number 66 to 15259, was destined to become the most famous Cobra of the war. It was documented as the first Cobra to fly in Vietnam, flying in front of General Westmoreland, commander of U.S. forces in Vietnam, on September 4, 1967. Just days later, on September 4th, the AH-1 achieved its first kill in combat by sinking a Viet Cong sampan. The first unit, the 3,349th Assault Helicopter Company, the first armed helicopter company in the history of the U.S. Army, activated on July 25, 1962, was declared operational on October 6, 1967, marking the beginning of continuous operations by the Army until the U.S. withdrawal from South Vietnam in 1970-3. The Cobra's impact on the battlefield was immediate and dramatic. Pilots quickly discovered that the Cobra was everything the gunnery Huey wasn't: fast, agile, and deadly. With a top speed of 150 miles per hour, 275 kilometers per hour, the Cobra was significantly faster than the Huey. Its slim profile and superior maneuverability allowed it to move in and out of hot zones with incredible speed. The Cobras typically provided fire support for ground forces, escorted transport helicopters, and were part of airborne rocket artillery battalions. But the most effective and lethal tactic they developed was the hunter-killer team with OH-6 Cayuse scout helicopters, also known as pink teams. One team consisted of an OH-6 flying slowly and low to locate enemy forces. If the OH-6 drew fire, the Cobra could then engage the enemy that had revealed its position. This tactic was devastatingly effective. The small and agile OH-6 acted as the Cobra, flying low among the trees and over rice fields, deliberately lured the enemy into firing. The moment Viet Cong or North Vietnamese troops opened fire on the scout, they revealed its exact position. The Cobra, orbiting nearby at a higher altitude, would immediately dive down with miniguns roaring and rockets firing, destroying the enemy before they could react. Firefly missions were another Cobra specialty. During night operations, Cobras used flares to illuminate enemy positions and then attack them using their miniguns and Hydra 70 rockets. The ability to operate effectively at night gave U.S. forces a significant advantage, denying the enemy the traditional sanctuary of darkness. One of the most extraordinary incidents occurred on September 12, 1968. Captain Ronald Fogelman was flying an F-100 Super Sabre when his aircraft was shot down, and he ejected 200 miles north of Bien Hoa. Fogelman became the only pilot to be rescued by clinging to the deployed weapons panel door of an Army AH-1G. The Cobra, piloted by pilots whose heroism had saved Fogelman's life, flew with a fighter pilot dangling from the outside of the helicopter to safety. During the war, the Cobras also provided critical escort for Huey transport helicopters during troop insertions and extractions. This helicopter pairing dramatically improved the survivability of the helicopters transporting troops and their passengers. The operations of medical evacuations that had previously been extremely dangerous, they became significantly safer when the Cobras provided cover. Bell built 1,116 AH-1GS for the United States Army between 1967 and 1973. The Cobras accumulated over 1 million operational hours in Vietnam. The number of Cobras in service peaked in 1981. Of the nearly 1,110 AH-1s delivered from 1967 to 1973, approximately 300 were lost in combat and accidents during the war. On August 15, 1971, Captain Alan Butler was flying the Virginia Rose II when he held off enemy forces attempting to invade South Vietnamese Marines. For this action, Butler received the Silver Star. The helicopter subsequently served in heavy combat operations during 1993 to 1994 in Somalia with Task Force Raven as part of Operation Continue Hope. The lessons learned in Vietnam with the Cobra directly informed the development of the AH-64 Apache, which would eventually replace the Cobra in U.S. Army service in the 1980s and 1990s. The common saying among former Cobra pilots who later became Apache pilots was that the Apache fixed all the problems we had with the Cobra, and that was pretty accurate, explained Bob Mitchell, curator at the Army Aviation Museum. We no longer had a power problem. We had two engines in case one was shot down, so you could still keep flying. It had a fire control computer, so it was everything the Cobra wasn't, and of course, it continues to evolve today, he continued, adding that despite its advancements, the Apache wouldn't be where it is today without the foundation laid by the Cobra. The U.S. Marine Corps took a keen interest in the Cobra and developed its own variants. After briefly using the AH-1 Cobra in Vietnam, the Marines acquired the twin-engine AH-1 Cobra, which arrived in Vietnam in 1971. The twin-engine configuration improved the Cobra's reliability and power output, making it better suited for naval operations and allowing it to operate more effectively in challenging environments, including over-water operations where a single engine posed a greater risk. In 1972, Marine Attack Helicopter Squadron HMA 369 operated its AH-1 helicopters from the deck of the amphibious assault ship Cleveland at night off the coast of North Vietnam in support of blockade operations in Operation Marhook. In this capacity, the squadron interdicted small boat traffic carrying cargo from merchant ships to landing sites on the North Vietnamese coast. The squadron's AH-1JS also flew combat sorties in the final chapter of the American experience in Vietnam, covering the evacuation of the U.S. Embassy in Saigon in April 1975. The AH-1 Cobra continued to serve after the Vietnam War, complemented by the delivery of the AH-1T, capable of launching the Hughes BGM-71A TOW anti-tank guided missile, which was delivered in 1978. The AH-1 Super Cobra entered service in 1986 and served on the front lines during Operation Desert Storm, where they destroyed 97 tanks and 104 armored personnel carriers and armored personnel carriers. The First Gulf War also marked the final combat for the AH-1 with HMA 773, a reserve squadron from Naval Air Station Atlanta, receiving the Navy Unit Citation for active service. The AH-1W continued operations in the global war on terror in Afghanistan and Iraq, with its successor, the AH-1Z Viper, making its first deployment in 2011. As a testament to how far the design advanced, the AH-1 of the Vietnam War had a top speed of 207 miles per hour and a gross weight of less than 10,000 pounds, while the AH-1Z has a gross weight of more than 18,000 pounds and a top speed of more than 250 miles per hour. The U.S. Army officially retired its AH-1 Cobra from active service in March 1999 and the Reserve Forces in September 2001. However, versions of the Cobra continue to serve in the U.S. Marine Corps and the armed forces of many nations around the world. And that concludes our incredible story of the AH-1 Cobra, the first dedicated attack helicopter that forever changed the war in Vietnam and laid the foundation for all modern attack helicopters. If you've been fascinated by how this serpent of the sky revolutionized aerial combat and want to continue learning about historical military aviation, helicopter technology, and the battles that defined the Vietnam War, don't forget to like this post, like this video, and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any content. See you in the next video where we'll continue exploring the weapons and machines that changed military history.